Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, special presentation of the Mass Save Passive House and All Electric Homes training series featuring ENERGY STAR Multifamily. My name is Keegan Evans. I'm with ICF. We are the lead vendor working on behalf of the sponsors of Mass Save to bring you this training series. Today's session will be recorded and will be posted online afterwards. This training is brought to you at no cost, thanks to the sponsors of Mass Save. A reminder that part of this training series, we offer a 50% cost reimbursement for individuals pursuing either Passive House or ENERGY STAR professional accreditation. The reimbursement includes the cost of the training and the exam process, and once you become certified, we will process your reimbursement. In addition to the workforce development and training series, if you want to go to the next slide, Rebecca, we offer incentives for single-family and multifamily projects that are participating in the program. As of July 1st, 2024, the program is now all electric in nature. There are no longer incentives for fossil fuel projects. Single family slide, please. And so for single family incentives, there are 3 tiers: a base tier for all electric projects, an ENERGY STAR NextGen tier, and Passive House tier with commensurate incentives there below. And there are also market transformation adders to promote specific types of equipment and technology, as well as additional certifications available. In the multifamily sector, there is, again, 3 tiers: a base tier, an ENERGY STAR tier, and a Passive House tier. The one major difference is fossil fuel domestic hot water is, for now, allowable in multifamily buildings participating in the program, but otherwise the buildings should be all electric. You can see the incentives are a per unit incentive at each tier. And again, there are market transformation adders available for certain technologies and equipment types, as well as additional certifications. So if you're interested in learning more and enrolling a project, please reach out to us and we will answer any questions and get you paired up with an account manager. So with that, I will turn it over to today's speakers. We're excited to be joined by Rebecca Hudson from EPA and Gayathri Vijayakumar from Stephen Winters Associates. I will let you guys take it from here.
Great, thank you. So this is Rebecca Hudson speaking, and I am the technical manager for the ENERGY STAR Multifamily New Construction Program. And we've got a full agenda today, so I'm going to dive right in. We're going to go over the new federal tax credits first, and then we'll move into the overview of the multifamily new construction program, including eligibility, key elements of the program, the certification process, and our website. And then we'll also have details about National Version 1.2 specifically. So first, I'm going to pull up a poll for folks, see if everybody is there, and wondering who was on the single family new homes webinar that was on Tuesday for the ENERGY STAR series. I think. Oh, there we go. Now it should be lunch, so you should be able to join. This will just give me a sense. We looks like we've got those folks there, and a 60-40 split. So about almost half of you, not quite half of you, were at the webinar on Tuesday. Great. So you'll see a lot of alignment between the 2 programs if you were on the webinar. And then the next poll is, how familiar are you with ENERGY STAR multifamily new construction specifically? So you're not familiar with it, you've done some single family new homes work, but not multifamily new construction. You have a basic understanding of multifamily new construction, maybe you've listened to a webinar before, or you're already working on buildings going through the program. It looks like most people have voted again, And we've got a mix of a basic understanding or not very familiar at all. So that's great. You guys are in the right place for that. So we'll be going through the overview. If you're all experts, then I'd say this might not be for you. First, I'll go through and cover the federal tax credits. So you already had the incentives that are for Massachusetts, but there's also federal incentives available as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. The 45L tax credit has now been updated and extended through 2032, and it's specifically tied to certification to an eligible version of the relevant ENERGY STAR or Zero Energy Ready Homes program requirements. Now, the tax credit applies to single-family homes, multifamily homes, and manufactured, but today I am focused just on multifamily homes. So for those units that are certified to the minimum eligible version, which does vary by program and year and location, $500 is available for ENERGY STAR certification and double that for Zero Energy Ready homes. And if prevailing wages have been met, then those incentives go up to $2,500 and $5,000 respectively. We'll talk about minimum eligible versions in a couple of slides, but I want to talk through the basics. The minimum eligible version for the tax credit is determined relative to the dwelling unit's acquisition date, not the permit date. And so this can be really confusing because it's different than how our program requirements are set up for plain old ENERGY STAR certification, where version enforcement is based on permit date. And it's also different from how the tax credit works for the Zero Energy Ready Homes program. But this is the rule that Congress decided when drafting the legislation, not us. So something we can't change. We just hopefully can help folks understand that it exists. The term acquired is defined by the IRS to include purchase as well as leasing by a person from an eligible contractor for use as a residence during the taxable year. Now, the minimum eligible versions for the tax credit are based on acquisition date, and they are either called out specifically in the legislation or they're governed by EPA's defined effective dates. So they transition over time based on the look-back timeline prescribed in 45L, which is 3 years for multifamily new constructions. And we have posted tables of the minimum eligible versions on the ENERGY STAR website for acquisitions made in 2023 through 2027 for multifamily. We'll take a look at those next, and that's at the link shown here. And I do want to emphasize, though, that the minimum eligible version required for the tax credit can be more stringent than what's required just for ENERGY STAR certification, and this can be confusing as well. But it's similar to how the incentives that you guys have for Massachusetts are based on a more stringent version than what's required for regular ENERGY STAR certification. So we have in 2024 for most states, including Massachusetts, the minimum version required for the tax credit is version 1.1. Again, this is for all multifamily buildings acquired in 2024, and nothing changes for 2025 and 2026. But in 2027, there's a transition to version 1.2. So for all buildings that are acquired in 2027, you'll need to meet multifamily national version 1.2. So you're getting well set up if you're also going for the Massachusetts incentive to get the national incentive, especially if your building might not be finished until 2027. Okay, so here's another quiz for you. We have an example of a Massachusetts building that's permitted, was permitted January 1st in 2024 and acquired August in 2027. What are the minimum program versions that must be used for certification and for 45L tax credit? You probably don't have the versions and tax credit stuff memorized, but we have our chart here for what program versions are required in the states and for ENERGY STAR certification, and then what would be required for acquisition in 2027. So if you guys think of your answer, and then I'm gonna pull it up and see if I can launch this. whether you think certification and tax credit both require version 1.1, or for certification you need version 1.1 but tax credit 1.2, or for certification and tax credit you need 1.2 for both of those. Let's see, I think, oh great, folks were able to do that very well. So the answer is in fact B. Right now, version 1.1 is required for certification in Massachusetts, and by the time this building would be acquired in 2027, for the tax credit, it would need to meet version 1.2. Okay. If you have any additional questions about the tax credit, you can reach out to us. However, we generally can just provide what the IRS has already told us. And so in many cases, we'll have to just direct you to a tax professional. With that, let's get into the details of the multifamily new construction program. Okay, and starting with eligibility. If you were on the webinar Tuesday, you heard about the single-family new homes eligibility, which includes detached single-family, detached two-family homes, and townhouses. For multifamily new construction, you can have low-rise multifamily buildings, mid-rise, high-rise, and townhouses. So townhouses can participate in both. Mixed-use buildings can also participate in this program if they're at least 50% residential. And if you have mixed-use buildings or sort of similar multifamily buildings, you may want to look deeper at our eligibility tree. For example, dorms are eligible to participate in multifamily new construction. Hotels and motels are not. And senior care communities, it depends on what type of senior care it is. So if you have those types of buildings, you'll need to look at the footnotes on our eligibility tree for more information. Okay, now that we've covered eligibility, let's get into the key program requirements. So here they are, broken into 4 categories: efficiency and testing, comfort, air quality, and durability. And this should look very familiar if you were on the single family webinar, as the main categories are the same, and we'll go through each one. So we're starting with efficiency, and the first one is above code performance. To ensure that at least 10% savings relative to code, EPA has developed different versions of the ENERGY STAR program requirements that are effective in states depending on the adopted code. And for each of these versions, there are 3 paths for compliance. So for most states, including Massachusetts, National Version 1.1 is in effect as of January 2023 for all those states, because we sunset version 1.0. And it applies to states that have a code less rigorous than the 2021 ICC. And National Version 1.2 will be implemented in states that have adopted the 2021 ICC or equivalent. And we've identified the first cluster of those states in green, but that won't be until starting January 1st, 2027 for those states. And Massachusetts is not yet on that list. We want to go into each of those 3 paths. So the first path to achieving the above code savings is the ERI path, and this is available for buildings of any heights. The units need to meet our specific ENERGY STAR ERI target, and the common spaces need to meet prescriptive measures, given that they have additional ones because they're not included in the model. I'll note that I'm talking through and saying ERI because that's the ANSI 301 standard language, although you may be more familiar with the HERS index, and so it is the same numbers used. For the ERI path, we have a multifamily reference design that defines what the ERI target is. If you take townhouses through the multifamily new construction program, you do need to use the single family new homes reference design. And we've already gone over 1.1 and 1.2. So the next path is the ASHRAE path, and that includes whole building modeling and requires 15% savings above ASHRAE 90.1. And for documentation, if you are doing version 1.2, you'll need to use the DOE compliance form. If you're using version 1.1, you could choose either DOE or ASHRAE path calculator. The year of the ASHRAE path requirement is based on the version and state commercial code. So for Massachusetts, if you're doing version 1.1, it's 15% over 90.1 2016, and 1.2 is 15% over 90.1 2019. In addition to the cost savings, we also allow you to use source energy savings. And if you're getting FIA certification, we have a special option for WFI savings as well. And the final path is the prescriptive path, which doesn't require any energy modeling, and it essentially means that you do the measures in the ENERGY STAR reference design, and there are a few additional measures such as window to wall ratio also included in the checklist. In general, all of our requirements cover the whole building, meaning dwelling units and common spaces and garages need to meet the requirements. And so while the common spaces are included in the energy model for the ASHRAE path, their ERI path and prescriptive paths have additional efficiency measures for those common spaces, including limits on electric resistance space heating. There's also requirements for all types of systems, including those central systems and systems serving common spaces and garages. And if you have a large building over 50,000 square feet, you do need to have a way to collect data on your utility bills so that you have the ability to benchmark the building in the future. Now we've covered our above code performance, and the next part is the third-party inspection. Simply put, you don't know what you don't inspect, and so while you may design the best building with the wonderful features, you don't know if that's actually what gets delivered unless you go on site and you look at it, and that's where a third-party rater called a third-party inspector called the energy rater comes in. And it's a critical set of eyes to make sure that all of these details have been met. It also helps reduce the liability of the builder because you're making sure they're getting what they are paying for. And it's the rater who has the equipment and expertise to measure the key features and do the performance testing. So the rater will complete at least two inspections, both pre-drywall and final, and they also will perform a series of performance testing, and then they'll be able to take all the documentation and submit it to an oversight organization that oversees the certification, and those are different based on paths. So you have the ERI path, you go to home certification organization, and ASHRAE and prescriptive goes to multifamily review organization. The next feature, so that was the foundation of the program, the above code performance and testing. But on top of that, the efficiency that's already locked in, we want to add a handful of additional efficiency features. And the first are all three comfort features. So we have the complete thermal enclosure system. That means having high enough insulation R values and high performing windows to be effective. And we call this our thermal backstop, and we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. It also means achieving grade 1 insulation installation and ensuring that you're getting all the insulation you're paying for, air barriers and air sealing, and reduced thermal bridging strategies as well. The second comfort feature is that dwelling units must be individually air sealed. And so this reduces your energy loss and also minimizes pests, odors, and sound transfer. I want to note this is not a whole building test, so we don't have a whole building testing limit, we just have the individual dwelling unit testing limits. And then the third comfort feature is a properly sized and installed HVAC system, and this touches both on efficiency and comfort. But the dwelling unit HVAC systems need to be properly sized with sealed ductwork. They need to have a thermostat in the unit, a return air pathway for bedrooms, and a properly installed MERV 6 or better filter. For common spaces and central systems, you still need to document your loads, and you need to have controls on those systems such as your freeze protection systems. And the HVAC systems in both dwelling units and common spaces also need to be properly installed. There are a couple ways to do this in the ENERGY STAR program. You can choose the functional testing option, or for residential systems, we recommend using HVAC grading, and that's a series of 5 tasks the rater can complete, resulting in a grade for the HVAC system. And here are those 5 tasks. So now we've covered our comfort features, and the next section are 3 air quality features. Because we have high performance buildings, we want to build it right. And so we need to make sure that dwelling unit fresh air is delivered to each dwelling unit. You can do this in a variety of ways, from a bath fan with a control to inline supply fan, all the way up to an HRV or an ERV. But the point is you want to make sure you're having control over the air that is entering the dwelling unit. You also want to make sure that you are bringing the pollutants out of the dwelling unit. So it's really important for the kitchen and bath fans to exhaust to the outside. If you have a dwelling unit range hood or microwave installed in recirc mode, it's just blowing that contaminants right back in your face and not doing much. So our requirements are to make sure that they go to the outside. And in some cases, we also have sound limits on this. The third air quality feature is combustion safety, and most of our partners use power vented or direct appliances, or just electric ones, which many of you will be using if you're going for the incentives to avoid this issue altogether. You also could put them outside of the pressure boundary. And finally, we have our durability feature, the water management system, which basically means proper flashing to keep moisture draining away from the building. But this is a list that the builder implements, not a checklist to be filled out. And we know it's really important. Most of these are baked into code already. So there you have it. Those are our key features, and that's just a quick overview of those. And then I am going to pass it off to Gayathri.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. I think we may have forgot to mention, but if you type in your questions, I see a couple have gone in there. We're going to try and answer them as we go, but we should have a few minutes at the end to revisit any ones that we don't answer. You're going to hear me repeat some information that Rebecca already shared, but in the context, she's been talking about the requirements. It's hard not to talk about who the people are who are verifying these requirements, but I'm going to go through who these individuals are and the requirements to serve this role. So for all multifamily projects, you're always going to have, your builder or developer. You're going to have your architect, your HVAC designer. In addition, for ENERGY STAR certification, you have to have that third-party verifier, our rater, our functional testing agent, and then our oversight organizations, like Rebecca mentioned. If you choose that ASHRAE modeling path that she mentioned, you're going to have this ASHRAE modeler. So we're going to take slide by slide each individual role. So the first one is our builder developer partner, and we use that word intentionally. We have partners and then we have participants. So a builder or developer is a partner, and so is a rater. So the first expectation of our builders is that they identify a rater to work with to provide their third-party verification. So when you do get these slides later, everything in blue underline is a hyperlink. So you'll be able to click to this directory, but I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So if you are a builder online, you could find a rater in the Massachusetts area just by entering Massachusetts in that dropdown. This screenshot is actually for Minnesota, but once you use this directory, you can either find builders that are approved partners, or you can find energy raters that are approved partners. And you're definitely going to need an approved ENERGY STAR partner to complete the project. So in addition to working with the rater, the builder has to go through the same steps and become a partner themselves. And as Rebecca mentioned, they are responsible for making sure the requirements related to water management are in the design of the building and in the construction of the building. The third-party verifier is not going to inspect for those. So again, if you get the slides later, it's a quick hyperlink there to get to that partnership agreement. Again, there's no cost to that. The one step is to complete the viewing of this online orientation video. So to the raters, right, they're doing that third-party verification. This process starts at schematic, ideally, definitely by the design stage. And we're going to talk a little bit later about the program documents that contain all these requirements, but just kind of to preview that, it's a rater design review checklist and a rater field checklist. These are the two documents that the rater will use that go into detail. Like Rebecca gave you some high-level information about the energy features that go into the building. These program documents, these checklists, are very descriptive and detailed and itemized, so the rater can actually check these things off as they review them in the plans or on site. The rater is kind of the shepherd in this program, so they might not have to complete all the rest of the items, but they do have to collect the documentation. So from the HVAC designer, they'll collect an HVAC design report that the designer completed. from the functional testing agent who does the functional testing of HVAC systems. They complete a checklist that the rater will collect. If the ASHRAE path was used for modeling, the rater will collect what the modeler used to document the results of the modeling. So that's either that compliance form or the ASHRAE path calculator, along with the actual modeling files. And then for our ASHRAE and prescriptive paths, the documentation also has to be completed in our multifamily workbook, as well as photos must be collected and the construction documents themselves. So how do you become a rater, right? If you can be a certified rater, an approved inspector, some designation that's been determined by either the HCO or the MRO. Again, for most of the folks on this call, this could be a HERS rater or RFI. If you have that credential, the next step to participate in ENERGY STAR MFNC is to complete an EPA recognized training class. If it's been some time and you've only completed the single family new homes training, you would still need to add on the multifamily new construction rater training. If you haven't done either, there are some training providers that do offer it combined. And again, like I mentioned, the rater has to be an ENERGY STAR partner. There's a partnership agreement. Once that's completed, you will show up in that online directory. So our HVAC designer, there's no requirements to be an HVAC designer that participates in the program, but the expectation is that designer is going to complete what we call the HVAC design report, which documents the ventilation rates, the load calculations, the system selected, and they will provide that to the rater during the design process. Also related to HVAC, we have our functional testing agents on the other side of the construction schedule. So at the end of construction, they are the ones that are going to complete the functional testing checklist. They're going to run through the steps to make sure all HVAC systems are operating before the building gets certified. We do have requirements for our functional testing agents. Sometimes we call them our FTAs. Again, the hyperlink when you get these slides will take you to the long list of credentials, but some examples. Our current ENERGY STAR credential contractors are allowed to complete some systems on the functional testing checklist. Commissioning agent credentials are on there, as well as whether you are a professional engineer or the original equipment manufacturer representative. To become a functional testing agent that's approved for ENERGY STAR multifamily new construction, it's fairly easy. You watch an online orientation video that talks you through the process, and then you will be listed on our online directory. For ASHRAE modelers, again, these are folks that are different than the typical HERS rater. They are not using an energy rating model for a dwelling unit. They're creating whole building energy models of their multifamily buildings. They're following a process that is described in ASHRAE 90.1 Appendix G, along with our ENERGY STAR simulation guidelines. So these folks will document the results either, again, in the ASHRAE path calculator or the DOE compliance form. These two files will calculate their percent savings and whether they're clearing that 15% target that Rebecca mentioned. They do this twice at initial design to make sure they have enough energy efficient measures to clear the target. And then again, at as built, in case things change, they want to demonstrate that the constructed building still achieved the savings. So requirements for the modelers, similar to our FTAs, they watch an online orientation video, and then they get listed in the directory. And just a reminder, we've mentioned this probably a couple times now at this point, but there is oversight of the raters. So we have multifamily oversight organizations. The home certification organization, the HCO, is the one that will oversee multifamily buildings going through the ERI path. HCOs typically also oversee the single family new homes program projects. And then we have our multifamily review organizations. They oversee multifamily buildings that seek ENERGY STAR through the ASHRAE or prescriptive path. Okay, so we have touched on the program documents, but let's go in a little bit more detail. These are the 5 that we've mentioned so far: the rater checklist, the HVAC design report, the functional testing, and the water management system requirements. These are all PDFs that are available on the website. The HVAC design report, just want to mention, if anyone here has heard or has attempted HVAC grading, that is an option. And so as an alternative to completing the ENERGY STAR HVAC design report, you can do HVAC grading, which has its own design report, and then complete the supplemental document that just contains the ENERGY STAR requirements that are not covered by HVAC grading. For functional testing agents, we do allow some amount of sampling. These are protocols that the ENERGY STAR team has developed. Most raters, your HCO has sampling protocols that you're allowed to follow, but this doesn't exist for functional testing agents. So there are sampling protocols available on our website. So in terms of supporting documents to help you meet and document all these requirements, I do want to mention the multifamily workbook and go through what it offers. This is an Excel-based tool. It has the rater design review checklist and the rater field checklist built into it as Excel tabs. So you can filter through the footnotes, you can filter based on the path you're choosing. It has great functionality once it's built into Excel. If you complete it within Excel, you do not need to separately submit the PDF. It also has Excel tabs for you to document the testing results. So for dwelling units in a multifamily building, you're testing for blower doors, you're testing the duct leakage, you're testing bath fan airflow, kitchen fan airflow. We worked with a lot of multifamily partners and learned from them what they were using in their own companies to document results. And we tried to take the best of the best and compiled it into this testing worksheet. It also offers some other checks of compliance and ways to document the efficiency features of the building. Now, it is only required if you're doing the ASHRAE and prescriptive path, but we think folks will love it so much that even though it's optional in the ERI path, they might choose to use it. Later today, we'll throw into the chat, if you're not familiar with this multifamily workbook, we are having a webinar tutorial on how to use it on Monday. So later in this webinar, we'll throw that into the chat so you can register for it. So aside from the workbook photo documentation, there is a photo guidance document on our webpage that itemizes the photos that need to be submitted. So for ASHRAE and prescriptive path projects, you submit those photos to your MROs. And if you're doing ERI path, you're submitting those to your provider. This is what all those PDFs look like. As you can see a little bit in the blue text on the HVAC design report, there is a sample completed. If you're struggling, if your HVAC designer is struggling with how to complete that report, there is a sample online. And based on feedback from partners, we've also developed an Excel version. And so that is also available online. Similarly, the functional testing checklist, some people found the PDF a little tedious to complete, so there is an Excel version online. And this screen just adds the two documents, whether you're doing the ASHRAE path, so those two bottom documents, the simulation guidelines are a supplement to ASHRAE Appendix G, kind of fill in the gaps on specific to multifamily buildings. And then the Excel-based tool that the modeler will complete, that'll document their savings relative to the performance target. Okay, so we've been talking about versions and revisions, and so there is an intermediate step between program revisions. And so our revision process is that once a year, usually in the fall, the ENERGY STAR team will collect all the changes to our program requirements and republish the documents. So as you heard Rebecca mention, for Massachusetts, based on your permit date, you might be following something called Revision 2 or Revision 3. Right? So every time ENERGY STAR revises program documents, it's usually to update the documents to contain all these changes that happen over the course of the year based on partner feedback and questions and clarifications that were needed. So there's 12 months in between this. And so we do want certain clarifications to be available to everyone sooner than that fall publication date. And so those kinds of questions will reside in something we call the policy record. So this is a web page you can access, you can click on it. Any policy change that has been posted in the policy record is available to be used even before it's published in the actual printed program documents. So I'll show you one example. This is a question a partner asked many years ago about mineral wool and whether it's considered rigid insulation. So the issue gets documented and how the EPA is going to resolve the issue is usually stated. If it leads to a change in how we phrase our program documents, that language will be posted in the policy record as well. So before I hand it off to Rebecca, one final slide, since we're on the topic of revisions. She showed this slide earlier on and you guys passed the quiz with flying colors, but let's just talk through it real quick. For most of you, you're in Massachusetts, but in case you're working in other states, you check this exhibit for your state. And then the second column is your permit date or your permit application date. For multifamily, we do allow both. And then the next column will tell you what version applies. And then the final column tells you what revision applies. So again, all of these might change based on your permit or permit application date. Let's take one through. So it is July 2024 right now. So if you have a permit or a permit application anytime this year, you are in version 1.1. but you are required to complete documents that have revision 3 in the header. So if you're looking at this slide right now, you can see at the top of the header, you see revision 4. So you just want to be careful about what revision is at the header or in the file name of the documents you're using. It's always okay to go ahead. So you could always complete in Rev 4, even if Rev 3 is required, but you can't go backwards. So the next example, if you're not going to get your permit until next year, you might want to be planning to use the Rev 4 documents already. So with that, I'm going to hand things back to Rebecca, and she's going to put this all together for you.
Thank you. So I've gone through a lot of the program and who can participate and the documents. So just as a reminder, overall, we have a series of mandatory requirements included in those checklists, including the testing and inspections that are required. And then we have our performance targets, where we have 3 different paths available: ERI, ASHRAE, and prescriptive. And then if we look at the overall certification process, we want to make sure that the builder just signs the partnership agreement, selects a rater. That rater needs to meet those requirements that Gayathri was mentioning with the training and also being a partner. During design, the builder is going to figure out what they're going to do with their building, and the rater makes sure that those measures meet the requirements and does the ENERGY STAR design review checklist, and the HVAC designer is completing the HVAC design report. And for the ERI and the ASHRAE paths, you'll want to have the rater or the ASHRAE modeler doing the modeling as well. During construction, the rater will need to go and make sure they're doing their on-site inspections to verify that all of those ENERGY STAR requirements have been met. And then the functional testing agent is completing the testing, unless you're using HVAC rating during that. And finally, the rater is going to update the model if needed, or the ASHRAE model will update the model, and all documentation gets submitted to those oversight organizations, and then you can give the certificates back to the builder. The builder can go and market those buildings. We require a label and certificate for each dwelling unit. So let me just show you what those look like. So we've got a required dwelling unit label is a little sticker that can go on the electrical panel. You can optionally order a plaque. We have dwelling unit level certificates that need to be delivered, and then you can ask your oversight organization for a building level certificate that can be helpful for financing if you need to just show the building has been certified. Okay, so that was an overview of the main program and certification process, but I also want to go specifically through what's different for version 1.2. You already know about 90% of everything, but there are a couple key differences between versions. So between National Version 1.1 and 1.2, the main thing is a more stringent performance target, and the second thing is a more stringent thermal backstop. So what does the more stringent performance target mean? Here are the key efficiency features of version 1.2 reference design, and these are the enclosure elements. So it starts with installation levels aligned to the 2021 IECC residential chapter prescriptive path and achieving grade 1 insulation, and then windows and doors aligned with the latest ENERGY STAR product spec at the time. We were defining version 1.2 and a compartmentalization requirement of 0.3 CFM 50 per all units. So these are the measures that go into the reference design. I'll reiterate this again, but these are only required for the prescriptive path. Otherwise, these are just the things that you can get a sense of what, if you don't include these measures, what you might need to trade off for in other features. So then we have our non-enclosure elements, including furnaces to ENERGY STAR, heat pumps to ENERGY STAR, HVAC systems properly installed, ducts in conditioned space, water heater is either a instant gas or a heat pump water heater, and 100% LED lighting. Notice that for the water heater, the electric water heater is technically a heat pump water heater, although lower than UEF for any available ones. This gives you a little bit of wiggle room in multifamily to improve elsewhere, unless you're doing the prescriptive path, to be able to have a electric resistance water heater in there. You need to do significant improvements elsewhere. Okay, so that was the reference design, and then overall, here are the performance targets that result from that. So the ERI path, the ERI target is generally in the 45 to 55 range, and that's for the in-unit dwelling unit target. We also have increases in the common space prescriptive HVAC, hot water, and lighting efficiencies associated with the version. ASHRAE path, the target is 15% savings over 90.1 2019. And for the prescriptive path, you need to do all of those measures in the reference design. So otherwise, you can trade off from them to meet that overall target. But if you're doing the prescriptive path, you have to meet all of them. And I will just note that it will be hard to meet the target without these key features of the 2021 IECC installation levels, ducts and conditioned space, and the gas or heat pump water heater. Next up is the more stringent thermal backstop. So the thermal backstop is the minimum amount of insulation and window performance that must be met. It's defined using an area weighted U factor for the enclosure, and regardless of whatever the performance of the building is, so no matter how much you're flying through our performance targets, a building cannot have an enclosure worse than this limit. However, you can trade off between the insulations and windows in different assemblies. So under version 1.1, the thermal backstop is primarily tied to the 2009 IECC prescriptive path, or the UA equivalent for that. And under version 1.2, it's tied to the more stringent 2021 prescriptive path, or the UA equivalent for that. If you have a building permitted before January 1st, 2025, then you can do 105% of that UA as a short-term allowance to get up to the new level. So in the multifamily new construction program, you can choose the residential chapter or the commercial chapter insulation values. But the building needs to select one full chapter for dwelling units and one for common spaces. You can't pick the ceiling from one and the walls from another. If you're doing the prescriptive path, then you need to meet the reference design. For the different versions, we have a table in the Radar Design Review checklist that will show you specifically where the backstop comes from. So if you're using version 1.2, you'll look for the version and you look at this table, and then you figure out which path. If you're following the ERI path, you'll look on this line. If you're looking for what's required in the dwelling units, and you look here, and you can choose between the residential chapter or the group R column of the commercial chapter of the 2021 IECC. And then for common spaces, you'll want to look, and you can choose between the residential or commercial chapter and the all other column for the 2021 IECC. And the UA, this is all automatically calculated for you on the dwelling unit level from your ERI, or if you're using the building UA or the ASHRAE or prescriptive path, then it's calculated for you in the multifamily workbook. So for windows, the requirements are based on window type, location, and path. So we have a very similar table there for what windows you need to use. Okay, now I have another quiz to see if folks were following what I've been talking through. So what is the key difference between National Version 1.1 and 1.2? Is it a more stringent performance target, a more stringent performance target, and a new thermal backstop, or battery storage required everywhere? Looks like we got folks answering, and folks are doing well. So Yes, the answer is B, a more stringent performance target and the new thermal backstop. And then this one's a little trickier, but what's the typical range of ERI targets for version 1.2? Oops, I didn't hit launch. Okay, there we go. I'll do this very fast. Let's see. Okay, we've got the first few folks are good, and folks are getting it. 45 to 55. Yep, we're not down in the zeros, or exactly one number for all of them. We have a range based on the ERI target. So now, final thing I'm going to do is walk through our website. So this is going to go fast because I just want to steer folks through. And maybe, Gayathri, you could put our main website in the chat so people can check it out if they want. But here's our main website, short link, energystar.gov/MFNC. And you can see this is for multifamily buildings. If you wanted single family homes, you would click above. We start with our eligibility, and that's where you can click and go to the eligibility tree I showed earlier. We have our map with the program versions that are required. And then this is where you get that document that tells you more specifically, this one that Gayathri was walking you through. And then next up is the certification process. And if you click here, you can go deeper into the certification process. We have a page on it. This also has a technical bulletin on the certification process. And if you click read more right here, that's where you can find more about the ASHRAE path targets and so what is required. And then we have our program requirements listed down where we have the national program requirements documents, which are what are relevant for Massachusetts. Below that are the regional ones, but here's a handy button called Download All that you can download all of the documents. And then here we have our additional supporting documentation. So that's where we have the Excel files and the ASHRAE calculators and such. We also have partner pages. And so if you click on here to learn more for working with ENERGY STAR, you'll see we have pages for multiple partners. I'll show you the other participants a little bit later. We also have a link to click for builders, and then they can find out about joining. And this is where the rater page comes up, and you'll see here. And then if we focus on the training requirements specifically, they're right in the middle of the page, and there's a list of the current trained raters. And if you click on that, it'll show folks who have sent us their certificate. It is not a complete list. It just means that we have been sent the certificate for both single family and multifamily for those individuals. And then we have the ASHRAE modeler page. So if you go to that other participant link that I showed you earlier, then you'll get on this page, and ASHRAE modelers are here, and the directory for them is listed here. And then for functional testing agents, they're also on that other stakeholder page if you scroll down. And you can either click here for a link to the credentialed contractor directory or the functional testing agent directory, which will display up here. And then finally, going back to the working with page, we also have a link to our marketing resources, and these are also in the left nav as well. And you will see a list of all of the different marketing resources available. We also have our multifamily building locator, and this shows all the buildings going through the ASHRAE and prescriptive paths, and we're working on the ERI path, but for now, you'll need to specifically request one, send one to us if you want it listed here. And you can also fill out a building profile highlight that will get posted to our page. And for those of you who participate, there also are awards. So we have our Partner of the Year award. The applications will be posted shortly and are due at the like November timeframe. Market Leader Award was recently announced for our 2024 winners. And we have educational resources. Their technical bulletins are listed here, and there's two that are helpful if you scroll down to the ones for the multifamily new construction certification process, as well as getting your project team ready. These are key ones for folks new to the program. We also have our live webinars. So you'll see this was from this week, and as noted, we have our multifamily workbook tutorial on Monday. So if you're interested in that, make sure you look there. And our past webinars we have as well, so you can go back and look at recordings. And then finally, I want to nod to our ENERGY STAR NextGen Certified Homes and Apartments program. If you were on the call on Tuesday, you heard more about this. And it is also available for multifamily buildings. You are already starting, if you have achieving version 1.2 for multifamily new construction, that's the required bit for the first part. And then you just need to have connected heat pump heating for the dwelling units, connected heat pump water heating for the dwelling units, electric cooking, and we have vehicle charging requirements. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening in, and we can open it up for questions.
Shall I hop in and send you some questions from the chat? I think one question I did answer for the specific attendee, but their question was, is sampling allowed for ENERGY STAR multifamily new construction certification?
Yes. So yes, sampling is allowed for multifamily new construction. We are sunsetting it for the single family program, but it is allowed for multifamily new construction. It is not allowed for townhouses that are going through multifamily new construction.
Great. And I'm going to ask a question, but I'm going to answer it, Rebecca. We did have some questions in the chat that came in about FIAS projects and some of the challenges they have in terms of ventilation and openings in our envelope. So I'm going to take those two together. And if the attendee that asked those questions, if I'm not answering the full question, go ahead and type in another question. I'll try again. The first one is kitchen exhaust ventilation. Rebecca mentioned that we have kitchen exhaust requirements. We want those vented to the outdoors. We want the contaminants to leave the building. So you have two options. It can go through the exterior facade or it can be through central risers. So I think in practice, we've seen a lot of passive house projects choose to use a central riser to take all their bathroom exhaust and kitchen exhaust and take it through a riser rather than trying to poke holes in their wonderfully designed envelope. So that is one option. If you do happen to vent your bathroom and kitchen exhaust through the wall, you just have to follow the blower door airtightness testing procedures in terms of whether those ventilation openings can be sealed or taped or closed or what have you when you actually go to do the test. The other question I think was about the kitchen ventilation rate. And for those who have not participated in ENERGY STAR before, we rely on ASHRAE 622 to set the ventilation standards. Those are minimum rates. And so we have made an accommodation for passive house, PHI or FIAS certified buildings. So if you are officially certified at the end of construction, you have your certification in hand, you would be allowed to just use a 25 CFM continuous kitchen exhaust rate. That is not a value that's in ASHRAE 622, but it has been in older editions of the IRC and IMC. So that's an accommodation we did allow for passive house certified buildings. But the building has to be certified. There are some accommodations for buildings that didn't quite get certified, but still have balance systems and very, very tight envelopes. So I'm going to pause there, and hopefully the few individuals that asked the FIAS questions will keep typing in the chat. I think we did have somebody want to ask a question about the certification process slide. So I don't know if you can quickly jump back to it. I think they just like seeing all the steps in one shot. It is my understanding that you will get a copy of the slides at some point this week, so you can navigate to any of the slides. I know we were definitely moving fast. There was a lot of content to cover, but I think this is the slide they wanted. And then while that's up, I think the other question was about existing buildings and what are the options if they're not able to meet footing foundation requirements for new construction, and is there a path that we would recommend?
Okay, so yeah, this program is geared for new construction, although significant rehabs can participate if they can meet the requirements. So we do have on our website a technical bulletin about additional resources for gut rehabs and our allowances that are in the program requirements. So you want to check out the program requirements to see if they have alternatives that would be able to be used for this building, but it can be difficult to meet given that it was geared mainly for new construction, and we want to make sure that all of all the buildings meet our brand promise. Without knowing exactly which ones, you should also just make sure you're looking at latest revisions for what is required for our requirements.
So not seeing any other kind of unique questions. There was one question about 45L, and since I'm answering this person right now, I'll just go ahead and answer it. But the question was, would it be more practical if you're pursuing 45L tax credits for ENERGY STAR multifamily? Would it be more practical, since it's based on acquisition date, just to determine the version based on expected acquisition date rather than permit date? And 100% we agree that that would be more practical, right? So in the tables that Rebecca showed, right now, for sure, if you are 100% certain that your building, the multifamily building that is possibly under construction, under design, will definitely be sold, right? Sold or leased or whatever the definition is by the IRS. If that will definitely happen by December of 2026, I mean, that's 2.5 years from now. If that's certain, then you could go with version 1.1. But if you have any hesitance that that could happen and it might fall over to the next year, then you really should design for version 1.2, because jumping to version 1.2 based on what you heard from Rebecca, that's not something you can just do at the end, right? That would be hard to just adjust a 1.1 building to a 1.2 building if you're off by like a month or two on your acquisition date. So agree that that'd be best. I mean, we're here to talk about ENERGY STAR, but another way to kind of reduce anxiety might be to consider the Zero Energy Ready Homes program, because their tax credit is based on permit date rather than acquisition date. And yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. We did put into the chat, so if you're listening but haven't been paying attention to the chat, inside the chat you'll see the website to our program, and then a very long, complicated link to the GoToWebinar registration link. That is for our multifamily workbook tutorial on Monday.
Great. Well, unless there are any other questions, Rebecca and Gayathri, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise on this program. We really appreciate it. And again, just a reminder that we will make the recording of today's session available on the Mass Save YouTube channel. So do check that out or share it with folks that weren't able to attend today. And again, thank you to the sponsors of Mass Save for hosting and promoting today's training and all the trainings as part of this workforce development initiative. So with that, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you again so much to our speakers and for everyone for joining.
Thank you all.